Please don't count that against me. That's not my time. All right, it's the pointer is what I want. Okay. Anyway, so individuals who have a hypersensitive reward system, when they experience approach or reward system activating or deactivating events, I can't get the pointer, there we go. They should experience excessive, Dan, bring me my pointer. Thank you. All right, sorry. So they should experience states of excessive reward activation or deactivation, which we then hypothesize will lead to disruptions of their social rhythms or daily schedules, which entrain circadian rhythms. So therefore, hypothetically, there should be circadian rhythm disruption, which then leads to hypomanic, manic, or depressive symptoms, respectively. So now, when, as an example, when an individual with a hypersensitive reward system experiences a state of excessive reward activation following approach activating events, this will lead to behaviors like excessive goal striving, response initiation, etc. And these are behaviors that are incompatible with maintaining social rhythm regularity. So as an example, they might work excessively long hours and neglect their normal bedtime or meal times, which should lead to circadian rhythm disruption and hypomanic or manic symptoms. Same idea if they experience a state of excessive reward deactivation from approach deactivating events. This also may lead to decreased approach, decreased goal striving, decreased response initiation, which may also lead to neglect social routines, and so on. Now, also, as we learned from Greg Murray's talk, circadian rhythm disruption in turn can influence reward sensitivity and reward activation states. So what we've been doing is we've been doing a number of tests of this model in a sample of adolescents chosen to have high versus moderate levels of reward sensitivity. And first thing I'm going to show you is that in this sample that controlling for age, family history of bipolar disorder, initial symptoms, alcohol, drug abuse, and a bunch of other things, we found that high reward sensitive adolescents who also were low in social rhythm regularity were significantly more likely to have a first lifetime onset of bipolar spectrum disorder when they were followed over 32 months than high reward sensitive adolescents who had high social rhythm regularity or than moderate reward sensitive adolescents regardless of their social rhythm regularity levels. Okay, we've also found that we see an interaction between reward sensitivity and exposure to approach activating and deactivating events, such that high reward sensitive adolescents, also known as high BAS, behavioral approach system, high BAS adolescents had significantly more interviewer rated social rhythm disruption than did moderate BAS adolescents following high levels of BAS activating events and high levels of BAS deactivating events. And they also had higher social rhythm disruption following high versus low levels of activating and deactivating events. All right, now we've also tested the mediation hypotheses of the model. So we found that, try to show you this. I'm not showing you the statistics, which you can see in the published paper, but basically social rhythm disruption mediated the association between approach activating events and prospective increases in hypomanic symptoms, and between BAS deactivating events and prospective levels or increases in depressive symptoms, and that this pathway was stronger for the high reward sensitive than the moderate reward sensitive participants. So we had moderated mediation here. Likewise, differential exposure, we found that the high reward sensitive adolescents actually experienced higher levels of approach activating and deactivating events, which then led to increased social rhythm disruption, which then led to increases in hypomanic and depressive symptoms, respectively. Okay, so now a problem with, or a shortcoming of those findings is that they depend on the assumption that social rhythm disruption is affecting circadian rhythm disruption. So in a study that's ongoing, we're trying to now begin to look at the circadian system a little bit more directly. So we're doing an ecological momentary assessment study involving 5 days of baseline, 10 days of goal striving, 5 days of goal or reward outcome in 3 groups of participants: are moderate reward sensitive, high reward sensitive participants, and high reward sensitive participants who did develop a bipolar spectrum disorder. And then what they're doing is continuously, throughout the 20 days, they're wearing actiwatches and skin temperature sensors to measure circadian rhythms, and they're doing a dim light melatonin onset procedure during each of the 3 phases of the study, melatonin being the best physiological indicator of circadian phase. And then also throughout the period, 3 times a day, they get texted and they respond to ratings of positive affect, negative affect, hypomanic and depressive symptoms, goal striving, and reward responsiveness. And then every night, they complete a measure of what events they had during the day, and based on a life event interview that comes at the end, we code those events for activation, VAS activation, and deactivation, and for social rhythm disruption. And they also complete sleep diaries and a daily social rhythm metric. So I'm just going to show you, this study is still in progress. These are very preliminary results, but I picked some that fit with Greg Murray's talk that we're getting. So what we're finding is that approach activating events during the day are predicting a later melatonin onset time that night, and they're also predicting later next day skin temperature minimum, 2 indices of relative circadian phase delay. We're also finding an interaction between group and the experience of these reward system activating events, so that you can see for the moderate and the high reward sensitive participants, when they have high levels of the reward system activating events, their circadian rhythm amplitude as measured by skin temperature is greater. But for the ones who have a bipolar spectrum disorder, they have a flatter circadian rhythm amplitude, which fits with some of Greg Murray's findings, and that's why I chose to show you these. That's it for my data blitz.